discussion proves a plot. I once sat. No.
Oh, very too bad.
Your Holiness, thank you very much for agreeing to meet with us on behalf of the assembled Sangha. And thank you for all of the Venerable Rinpoches, Sangha members, lay practitioners, teachers, and so on for coming. It has been a motto of the Westerners, as you probably know, echoing what the Buddha himself said in the Kalama Sutra: do not believe simply what you have heard, what has been passed down, what has been written in the scriptures, but examine, find out for yourself, and use it to the best it can be used. So we hope, in the spirit of free inquiry, to find out how to progress in the Dharma as practitioners and as teachers.
Firstly, I would like to express my deep appreciation as a Buddhist monk, as a follower of Buddha Shakyamuni. So you really, I think, have some kind of deep interest or deep concern about Buddha Dharma. So I appreciate it. I always emphasize that when we have some certain work, then the good part, let other people to praise, right? Let them to praise. Right? Then the people who really have the responsibility, ourselves must deal with all these negative side, difficult issues. So here also, I very much the welcome or appreciate the with sincere your concern and discuss and make clear in our mind how to deal all these with the negative or the dangerous thing. That's very good.
My subject is transmission. What is the value of this, a traditional authority of transmission, within a modern setting?
Oh, I think basically we are same human being. When Buddha was there, those human beings and today's human being is basically same. The basic human suffering is still there.
Okay.
So, and provided I think if we go, the basic, the basic teaching, then of course we are same. Even I think today, I think maybe worse. Now I think those who Indian, the great master, they have no institution. They have no the name of the Turku. They're simply just ordinary, like Teluba and Naruba. The people consider like beggar. Even no proper place where they live. They just remain with dogs. But then, they have deep experience. And acting like just a mad person. Some cases like mad. They, like Naruba, when he was in the Nalanda University, he was monk, very disciplined. After he received teaching from Teluba, he became just like a beggar and mad person, madman. Nobody knows. Nobody gives authority. Of course, he received his teaching from his teacher. And they developed his own proper, deep experience. Then when that person has the quality or capability to instruct others, to show the meaning of life or the meaning of spiritual, then if someone come to him or come to her and ask, and then see, judge, or examine whether the both sides examine one another. Even sometimes, if necessary, 2 years, examine, watching one another. Then once you're fully convinced, the teacher side, now this will be a proper disciple. The basic motivation of teaching is buddhicitta. Now there's a teacher side, see that possibility or the quality of that potential, that person. The immediate potential is all that.
Immediate potential.
The other person's side also, this person is something really reliable and can be trusted, can have the quality, to show me the proper way. Then through that way, develop some kind of full convince towards that person, and then consider as your own teacher. Then become teacher. So in a way, the real authority of Lama give by student. No one else. Nobody gives authority except student themselves. Decide now, this will be my teacher. Now I will follow this person. That become the guru and disciple. Basically, I believe, I think our new Buddhist friends, I think, must know, their first level, while they learn or listen some teaching, should not consider as a teacher, just as a dharma friend, and make warning. They accept as a teacher hurriedly is dangerous, not good. Now perhaps I think you notice, just as the last few days of my teaching here, at the upper part, right, first part, I told, there may be some people who have no faith. From my part, welcome. Just information. Should not consider as a religious teaching, and should not consider me as a teacher. No, just another human being. Listen, no, and examine and watch. There is a second part, initiation. Then I proud the second part is the initiation. Then I really act as because of Bansa Tara. So here you see the danger is here now. I think you see it is important to make clear the tantric initiation should not make available. The teacher side also should not give initiation without proper sort of examination. I think the Kala Chakra initiation perhaps exception. I know, it's defenseless.
Your Holiness, don't you think, many of us wonder, perhaps you might agree, that the way Tibetan Buddhism is presented in the West, maybe not in Tibet, but to us, is in very glorious and high promising terms, which with our advertising culture and materialistic minds becomes quite different than the way monks enter Sero or somewhere like that. Enlightenment in one lifetime, through Tantra in 7 years. At best,
It's like Chinese propaganda. within 3 years, achieve Buddhahood is just like Chinese propaganda. I'm certainly not practical. So let them know the reality. That's much better.
Then it sounds like we're criticizing the lamas that are the Eastern lamas that are saying those things.
What if our teachers are saying the other, are saying...
Your Holiness, on this question of criticism, every teacher today almost, with you as the maybe most significant exception, I would say, frankly, every teacher I find almost is criticizing the next teacher and teaching. And if we start to say this, we're doing the same.
Full of jealousy. It seems now it says one of the teacher's qualities is jealousy now. It seems now. These are sad, very sad. Yeah?
Your Holiness, I would like to give you a fuller picture of the situation in the United States, especially with Zen teachers. There have been quite a few scandals, big publicity at Zen centers regarding the sexual problems, mainly sex and drinking. These are the big problems. And we have meetings of Zen teachers each year in the summer. And in our last meeting, we talked about this big problem. And the teachers, the Zen teachers who do these things, they say that if you are a student, then you need to follow the precepts. If you are a teacher, enlightened teacher, then you're free. You can do what you want. And but we know that that's not right.
I think nowadays, I think that kind of thing is really the very, very harmful for Buddha Dharma. There's no doubt. So now, through every effort, we must stop this kind of situation. So then, how to stop? That's the question. We have to discuss. According to our Buddha's message, Buddhism itself is something really, it's a good thing. So therefore, I think when we mention these, when we publicize these things, I think we should make clear these are not Buddhist teaching, not a Buddhist teacher. So Buddhism, Buddhist teaching is explained something about Buddhist teaching. In order to teach other people, in order to help other people from spiritual way, first they themselves must improve. So suppose a person who is helping other people, first that person must have something to offer that. So therefore, such is Buddha's quotation. Make clear. Then they criticize about these individuals. Mention the name. Otherwise, again, they like Zen master teacher, Zen master. If just use just the general term, not good. Mention the particular individual name. It's worthwhile to publicize these things. Then make the other people know. Like that's the only way. Meanwhile, they make a very clear distinction to what is true Buddhist teaching. Then this individual behavior is totally against Buddhist teaching. So this is no longer considered as a teacher. That's the way. If there's close link, then such issue comes. We can easily deal. We can deal with one voice. But without that, proper has a close relation. Then if this issue bring, or sometimes creates more complicated,
But Your Holiness's voice would have a tremendous impact in the West, maybe not in Thailand and Japan, but in the West, with all of the schools, not just with the Tibetans.
Then, from me personally, whenever some opportunity comes, of course, I'm ready.
Whether or not other people are going to listen, that's another question.
I will shout. I can shout. That's better.
The teachers won't listen, maybe. The teachers who are having sex and drinking, they may not listen. But the students, they'll listen. They'll listen to you.
That will help.
Tremendously.
Then people can say no. If they know that it's wrong in your eyes, then people feel free to say no.
Because you are giving a standard which people trust in.
Basically, all this is a problem. It's due to the lack of inner strength, self-discipline, and that also is basically, although they know, they talk about dharma, but in their real life, the dharma and their life still is some kind of gap. So this is scholarly or academically, they have the quality or they have authority to teach, but then real is the practice. They are not adequate.
So I'm dealing here with the problem of unorthodox behavior on the part of certain teachers, mainly in the Tibetan tradition, excused as a display of compassionate, skillful means called crazy wisdom, right? We all know that in certain Dhamma circles, teachers act seemingly against the ethical conduct of Buddhism, as we've said, by having sexual relationships with their students and or frequently getting drunk and other abuses and showing outrageous behavior as a display of skillful and compassionate means. I mean, they say that this is a very skillful means for helping their disciples, and it's a display of their higher wisdom which cannot be understood by those of lesser attainment.
Now, actually, is it the practice of, let's say, sexual thing is they allowed only those people who have deep inside deep inside or deep I don't know whether it's a crazy wisdom or not. Somehow it's the proper wisdom, and so that is it to them. Is it alcohol and urine and what we call the other thing come from here? What call? Oh, these and human flesh, because of human flesh, animal flesh, same. He or she enjoy stool is a urine, just like alcohol. Or such person allowed to conduct these things. So I'm quite afraid, right? I think these teachers, I think in their mouth, if we put some urine, I think they will not enjoy.
Proposing for any guru purporting to do crazy wisdom a taste test.
Of course, these things. That's why I think you see the text say said even necessary. 12 years, right? You must examine your teacher before actually teaching received. So I often telling some my the Western friends, Buddhist friends, you should spy on your supposed teacher.
A person whom you may be considering
future
as a teacher.
The candidate of your future teacher, on him or on her, you must spy. Until you fully satisfied. That's the way.
Your Holiness, would the case that I discover after I have chosen a teacher, after careful consideration, if I later on find out that he is having sexual contact to his students, misusing his power, is that a sufficient reason to say, sorry, I won't go on with having this relationship with you anymore, if I only find out later?
Now, this is the problem now. Now, as a Buddhist, who practice Tantrayana, now, I can only say is, before receiving teaching with motivation or with consider as your teacher, before that, no problem. You receive teaching and then saw something wrong, then also no more respect. But I feel all right. Should be. Then, once you received teaching with the realization or recognition as your guru, and particularly the tantric teaching received. After that, when you saw some problem there, then it is very, very difficult, to develop disrespect towards that person. Then best thing, meantime, no need to keep receiving teaching or something. You can just distance, just ignore, not showing disrespect, but simply close on that side. Remain something like neutral. That's the problem. That's the only way.
Stories of the Mahasiddhas of the past show that their wild behavior resulted in a spiritual benefit to the object of their seeming, for example, their sexual partners gained realizations, animals that they killed were liberated, and so on. However, in the present time, it seems so often that their unrestrained behavior of certain lamas leads to pain, humiliation, confusion, and conflict, even to the rejection of the Dharma. So how can this be skillful means or compassionate activity? And also, even if the Lama himself is above ordinary moral restraints as a result of his higher realizations, even if, does he not have a responsibility to his lesser developed students to set an example of how a Dharma life should be lived? For example, in Chudang Trungpa's organization, many students became alcoholics, in addition to indulging in promiscuous sex, which simply created a lot of chaos in their lives. After all, Padmasambhava himself said one's view should be as wide as the skies and one's conduct as carefully sifted as barley flour.
The tantric teaching, as they call it itself is called the secret doctrine, so must remain secret. So secret means only those few individuals who really have the basic foundation, basic qualification, then give them that practice, not for public or many people.
Your Holiness, one difficult complication is that often when Western Dharma centers invite a Tibetan Lama, it's very expensive, and the only way that they can pay for that visit is if the Lama gives an initiation, and then many people come to the initiation and they raise a lot of money. If the Lama only teaches Lam Rim, not many people come, and they can't pay for the visit. Unfortunately, that often is the reason for having initiations in the West.
This morning, as I mentioned about this, my own the Kala Chakra initiation, actually, my basic aim, the Kala Chakra initiation, not initiation itself. In the name of Kala Chakra initiation, there's more public attention. People come. Then that gives me opportunity to explain how be a good human being, warm-hearted person. That's my aim. So therefore, the actual initiation, I think very few understand. And without understand, no initiation there. So that's just something like just public function. But that gives me an opportunity. More people come at least during that period, I think very few is quarrel. So at least a few days, you see, they develop some kind of positive, compassionate motivation or things like that. Yes.
Some people were talking about how there is a subtle misuse. There is subtle misuse of power, and often that comes into money. It points out from the way the Western people look at things and the way Asian people look at things, that sometimes you look at monks and they have Mercedes and lots of fancy things and look very rich. And then Westerners see this and think, oh, but we thought Buddhism was about simplicity and renunciation. And then they wonder, and then their faith in the Dharma goes down. But the Asian people would say, oh, this Shomai Lama, very successful. Or it would show that my Lama is people, the Jindak are very generous.
Yes.
And that's why we were suggesting that there should be a separation between the administration and between the spiritual power,
yes,
and maybe a little more equality and compassion in the distributing of money. We have talked a lot about ethics and attitude and behavior. And Your Holiness, what is it that can really transform the whole person through Buddhist training? Because people study and practice for 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years, and their behavior do not change and cause suffering. So what is it in the Buddhist training that can really transform the person as a whole person?
Of course, that you understand. Some of the traditions about that. Dambashi, Zawaji, then it didn't. That did it all my and change him. That's all the only do. Simply, I
think the main factors that can really affect spiritual transformation within the person would be understanding and reflection on the principle of the Four Noble Truths, the True Truths, and the practice of bodhicitta. I think these are the main factors that can really affect change.
As far as I know. And of course, these, you see, practice means through meditation. The analytical meditation, then kasara, one-pointness meditation, two meditation, two type of meditation. So the meditation is the most effective weapon.
But people do meditation for 10, 15, 20 years, and they are very nasty to their wives.
Yes, now is meditation. What kind of meditation? But some people might remain like you said, this, and meditation without thinking. That kind of meditation is actually is just relaxing, not meditation. And then also you see like the understanding of impermanence. Now just as meditate on permanence, yeah, this is everything is impermanence. Just as it remain like that. That also not effective. So analytical meditation. You say, look, outside you see the trees or flowers, and our inside also all our particles, blood circulations. I say, seeing these things and reasoning, then more convinced. That is the analytical meditation. And then the realization, meditate on suffering nature. And then, of course, there are a lot. So to me, I think the most effective as a method is the impermanence, yes, sometimes, but more I think they think about the suffering nature. Now there you see again now there's a different interpretation or different meaning, different level of ignorance. You see, in any case, that ignorance as the creator of samsara. So we are in samsara. Now this body, I take every care about this body, but this body always, why? So whole human life, you see, we every effort, you see, we are making every effort, be happy life, but all the time there's some kind of problems there. Why? Now, our answer is ignorance. This life, this body, is within 12 link. The creator of the rest of the, you see, the 11 link is the ignorance. So our master is not guru, but this ignorance is our master, real master. Everything controlled by that. So long situation remain like that, there is no possibility to get permanent peace. So you see, develop some kind of genuine, hatred towards ignorance. Ignorance is our enemy. So long we remain under the control of enemy, there is no possibility to relax, to do something to overcome. If there is samsara, if there is nirvana, if there is no tooth, later tooth, nirodha and mark, if there is no these other two truths, then better to forget about the samsara. Enjoy ourselves. Sex, alcohol, relax, swimming, good. If there is, you see, there nirvana is there, it is possible, something reality, something improve ourselves, then it is our long-term interest. The alcohol, these are short-term interest. The long-term interest is much more important than the temporary benefit, temporary happiness. So that's the way, you see, to improve oneself. Of course, the one side of our mind, the tendency or desire, attachment, these things, they are, as a human being, as a the beginner. So meantime, you see, they learn these things and investigate. Through investigation, yes, there is some indication, although it's still the nirvana is far away, but still there is some indication. You can feel there is some smell about a nirvana. In our daily life, there's more calm, less desire, less hatred. Peace of mind is there. That's the indication of the mark of nirvana, isn't it? So like this, through this way, yes, year by year, there is possibility to change. But if we study, you see, books, Buddhist scripture, just read, and remain here, then not much effect.
Today we have many forms of Buddhism that do not rely upon a traditional monastic institution. If we take the example of Buddhism in Japan, in particular Zen Buddhism, there is no longer the Vinaya, the Dulwa. We have the example of what Jack Cornfield presented yesterday, lay teachers creating institutions and organizations and traditions who are not ordained Sangha. So are the traditional criteria of ordained monastics, are they the only ones by which a country can be considered to be a place where Buddhism flourishes? Or would His Holiness consider other phenomena likewise as criteria for the presence of Buddhism?
I personally, my attitude is whether someone become Buddhist or not. This is altogether it's a different question. What our responsibility is, how much we can contribute from the Buddhism, how much we can contribute, how much help to offer humanity or world. So it doesn't matter whether they consider as a Buddhist or not. Doesn't matter whether there is, even I think from that viewpoint, it is possible. This is someone who really, practice Buddha's, how to say, the teaching, the essence of Buddha's teaching, say, compassion. And also, I think there's some kind of the conviction about Paticca Shunya, but without belief, reincarnation, rebirth theory. All right, doesn't matter. So long that person feel more comfortable. Just as one life, but within that lifetime, be more compassionate. Or as is the Buddhist main teaching, the Paticca, it widened their concept about our world. So that one life, that his or her life become more positive, more peaceful, more peaceful, more harmonious. So that is the purpose. So whether we call these people Buddhists or not, I think from one way we can say these are Buddhist, because they practice the essence of Buddhist teaching, and naturally they have some kind of I think very closeness feeling towards Buddha, no doubt. At the same time, they do not believe rebirth. So from one way, we do not consider these are as a Buddhist, but it doesn't matter. But what do you think? This is my way of approach, my basic belief. So once someone who has the deeper sort of the experience through investigation about mind, then it becomes much closer, automatically become closer about the theory of rebirth. So then again, the other way, the relative theory. Once you think more about that, then it leads selflessness. Now that again, because of more attraction towards nirvana. So then once you have some kind of strong feeling about the rebirth and the cessation of suffering, then the bhikshu, wow, it's very useful. So you go like that. That's the way. I think sometimes, we, our way of approach is, opposite. That's why we are suffering now. Without foundation, simply they aiming the monk, or they the Banzadara, because that's what Banzayana. Too complicated. And creates, because of too much expectation. Then within a few months, or some cases, even within a few days, they're not satisfied, and then lost interest, and they return their original way. I think worst thing is
one can lead to loss of faith.
So because of our whole way of approach, it's just, opposite, not realistic.
Go ahead, please.
Okay. Your Holiness, I want to ask about engaged Buddhism. I think many of us teachers were attracted to Buddhism as a way to investigate the mind. And we believed that the best way to change the world is to change ourselves and purify ourselves.
Well, exactly. Yes.
But many of us have become more and more concerned about the need to help others at the same time.
No, I entirely agree. It is important to carry more activities, social work. I think almost 2 years ago, when I was in Thailand, I had discussion with the supreme head of Sangha, Sangaraj, yes, Sangaraj there. I mentioned the Buddhist monk, the traditionally we prefer remain isolate. Now time changed. So like our Christian brothers and sisters, besides their own daily practice, they heavily involve the practical service of the community. So we must, you see, follow, you see, their example. I discussed with him. Then, and his reply, he say, "Oh, we are monk." The Buddha is made very clear. So we should not indulge in these activities. That also, yes, true. In a way, it is true. But so that is the and then so almost now, I think that now last is in more than 25 years. You see, among Tibetan monks and nuns also, you see, I appear from time to time, many occasions. But the response seems to see equally quite poor. So I am very, very glad to see your Kasura. Your practice is very good. But then, as a Buddhist, is the meditation. That also, without that, actually your daily work may not remain as a true Dharma work. So in order to work become truly Dharma work, so you need the meditation, meditation practice. Again, without work, without commitment, they sometimes the bodhicitta seems sometimes hypocrisy. Not effective. So I think there is some individual case may have some exceptional case, just to hold their life, whole time, 24 hours is the time. You see, they whole energy is to concentrate on certain deep meditation, like some of the some people who remain in mountain. So these naturally, you see, will be very few, right? Very few. But, okay, but majority of our Kasoda, the Buddhist community, must remain Kasoda active in the society, must remain the part of the community. That's very essential.
So this is a personal story or statement, and it's a little difficult for me to speak because it's so intimate and so recent. A little over a month ago, I left Daibosatsu Zendo. In my leaving the tradition and leaving my teacher, I'm creating space for myself as a Dharma teacher to reorganize. So personally, when I work with students, it will be necessary that they go through some kind of psychological profile as an investigation, not because they're psychologically unstable or sick. In the West, many people still think that psychotherapy is for someone who is mentally ill. So this stigma is there. But I think in the West, especially for teachers, they should go through some kind of deep psychological inquiry to see if there are these areas that are suppressed, these hidden areas, and not wait until later to find out when they're teaching. So in rearranging how we present the Dharma and bringing a strong psychological inquiry and discipline in at the beginning of practice to prevent this. So I guess my question, Your Holiness, to you is, considering the fact to be this kind of problem with lamas as well as other teachers, that in your understanding of this problem, how is it in a traditional way that one approaches a teacher or a lama who has these problems how then does the Dharma practice facilitate getting at this blocked area or this unconscious area which causes a teacher to abuse his position as teacher?
Now you see, those teachers, suppose they already, you see, practice Buddha Dharma. So still, you see, they behave not properly. So it definitely indicates, you see, lack of
shamefulness on their part.
They don't care about negative consequences for their own future life or within this life. So the other thing, like our conference, make a voice, give them warning. We no longer tolerate, as a Buddhist Dharma friends, who have equally concerned about Buddha Dharma and benefit of the sentient being.
Is there something then that's absolutely flawed in the character of the individual, or is the teaching inadequate?
I believe. You see, in some cases, there is a training not adequate. Now it's the mind or the emotion is so sophisticated. Just one single practice cannot match that. That's a fact. So this here is emotion. The negative emotion is so powerful, so is a complex way.
Very complex.
So I believe, we believe, I think. we believe. You see, therefore, you see, Buddha, you see, explained, you see, in order to measure, in order to confront one single emotion, there are so many different methods. Now the point, now you see, some tradition, like you see, Zen, at least, you see, as a result, I do not know, you see, Zen as a whole Zen tradition, but at least, you see, as a result of my conversation with some of my Zen, you see, practitioner, you see, they talk something high, and their practice something, you see, direct, you see, they link, or direct path. And of course, some people, it's sufficient. But I think generally, I'm quite sure not sufficient. And among Tibetan also, some people used to talk high. Yes, I think you see, they have, you see, some kind of, I think, deeper experience about that level. But then, you see, because their whole energy is concentrated there, something happened here. They are not ready. So that is the problem. So therefore, I think that frankly speaking, I much prefer the gradual path rather than jumping. Because, you see, if you see someone who properly, you see, meditate on shunya, the result must be more compassionate one. And genuine sort of the disciplined one. So since there is a positive result, so they are meditate, something must be wrong. So we cannot say, you see, in spite 30, 40 years meditation, still something wrong. We cannot say like that. Their whole, you see, the year, reality wasted. So again, I think due to lack of study. This is I believe.
Your Holiness, I wanted to present briefly the program which I've been involved in with Akron Rinpoche in developing a psychotherapy training, a way of psychotherapy which is based on Dharma principles and almost completely based on techniques which come from Buddhist teaching. So the first stage of the therapy we call the back to beginnings, otherwise called back to kindergarten. And groups of people meet regularly in small groups and spend the time together doing very, you might say, innocent things, like drawing and painting, very simple massage, and then the main focus of the 2 years of therapy is writing, each person to write their life story from the present back to the age of 1, then from the age of 1 up to the present, and then a third time back. And the idea is that the stories we tell ourselves, what happened in my life, they're lies. We make up a lie that we can live with. But if you take a lot of time and care, what really happened in my life, that then you really begin to understand something about cause and effect, how it really happened in your life. And to step back and say, what do I think about this? What did it really mean to me when this happened? So this kind of analysis and having friends standing by makes the maturity comes of its own accord. And at the same time, there's a sequence of visualizations, all, I think, taken from Tibetan Buddhist tradition, for helping people to feel that the healing they need is available. It's not missing, it's around. We only have to learn how to be open to it.
No, I mean, you mentioned some of them may be lying.
Yeah.
Not so that means deliberately or?
No, not deliberately. Due to ignorance.
Everyone does.
We all cover up.
Self-deception.
Self-deception.
I see. Oh.
And that this...
Because I'm watching my own. Because I'm laughing. How much is I thought this is some stories.
Then we go into some depth. What is the experience of each realm? How to be overcome with hatred is to be in a kind of hell realm if you're surrounded by weapons and afraid of killing and having to kill. And that, but then also to extend that, to imagine the vast fields of suffering, and to even people who don't believe in the reality of the realms, to expand their minds, to consider suffering way beyond their own personal experience.
How long is the whole thing?
The whole thing takes 5 years.
That's very good, excellent. I always remember the Buddha nature. That gives me some kind of the genuine hope. And because of the confidence always. Confidence. So that's a great teaching, Buddha nature. So that's, I think, our basic attitude should be how much contribution can contribute from my tradition. Not thinking how to spread, how to increase Buddhist number. That's, I think, wrong. Whether 1 or 2 Buddhists, doesn't matter. Our aim should be a happier humanity, happier world.
Your Holiness, I would like to start the presentation of the role of men and women in the tradition of Buddhism in the East and in the West with a short. I would invite everybody here in the room, I would invite you, please imagine you are a male being coming to a Buddhist center, and you come into the main room and you see this beautiful Tara Buddha, this female Buddha on the wall, surrounded by 16 Arhatinis, female Buddhas. And you have the great possibility and chance to talk to Her Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama, who in 14 incarnations always choose to have female rebirth. You hear about the 17th Karmapa, who choose to be reborn 17 times as a woman. You are surrounded by very high Rinpoche, she Rinpoches, beautiful, educated, strong women. And then you see the bhikshunis coming into the room, self-confident and outspoken. And then you see the monks coming into the room, very shy and timid. And then you hear about the lineage lamas of the tradition who are all female, down to the female Buddha Tara in the center. And then imagine you are male, yeah? And you are approaching a lama and you are a little bit insecure and a little bit irritated, and you ask, why? Are there only female symbols, female Buddhas, female teachers, female lineage lamas? And this lama tells you, why do you worry? Men and women are equal. Men and women are equal, I mean, almost. Well, I mean, we have some scriptures which say a male rebirth is inferior. But, I mean, this is just a compassionate perception of reality. Isn't it so that men have a more difficult time when all the leaders, politically, spiritually, philosophically, are women? Well, then maybe this male student who is very sincere goes to another lama of a Mahayana tradition and says, what about all these women? I mean, I'm a man. I mean, how can I identify? And then this teacher says, don't worry, you just meditate on shunyata. In shunyata, no man, no woman, no body, nothing, no problem. And then you go even to a tantric teacher and ask him, well, all these women and I'm a man, I don't know how to relate. He said, don't worry, you are Dhaka, beautiful Dhaka, you are so useful for all these practitioners to rouse their energy and to help them get enlightened. This is the visualization. Yeah? So, and now my question to Your Holiness. What would you recommend to your male students, lamas, to help overcome their patriarchal behavior in body, speech, and mind?
I think, strictly speaking, from the Buddhist viewpoint, the human right is something exclusive, I think it is something biased. So I think our way of approach is not just a human being, but all sentient being. So from that viewpoint, is the human being and the insect the same. So we should treat same way. I think your explanation, to me personally, very helpful, very useful. You see, it gives me some kind of also the new angle, right?
New angle of looking at things.
Bhikshu. What is your reaction? And Zen masters within Buddhist tradition. What do you say?
I think it's very helpful advice also. It's a very big problem in the Theravada world.
I think it's a very wonderful challenge for the male to see this and begin to accepting this, because it's another dimension that we're coming towards, another dimension, and everyone will benefit.
I think so.
This is what I'm very interested in this.
What do the nuns who are here also think?
It was very meaningful to me what Sylvia said, because I've found how the prejudice, even the subtle prejudice in the institution has affected me psychologically and become a hindrance on the path. You know, even though my teachers are very, very encouraging, and I receive the same teachings as the Western monks, this subtle prejudice makes you lose confidence. And in the same way, having, for the first years of my ordination, I tried to become a Tibetan nun and lower my head and like this and stay in the back of the room. And that does something to you psychologically, so that you, it makes a block on the path.
Please. Yes.
About sexism, I mean, when I came to India, I was ordained and lived in a monastery with 100 monks. and I was the only nun. I think that's why eventually I went and lived by myself in a cave. The monks were very kind. I mean, I didn't actually live in the monastery, but I had a room apart from the monastery. The monks were very kind. They were all my cousins, my uncles, some of them like my brother. I never had any problem from a sexual or any harassment point of view. They were all very wonderful. But, of course, I was unfortunately within this female form. I mean, they actually told me, well, they prayed that in my next lifetime I would have the good fortune to be reborn as a monk so that I could actually join the monastery. In the meantime, they didn't hold it against me that I had this inferior rebirth in female form. It wasn't too much my fault. And they had compassion. I once asked one of our Rinpoches if there was any advantage in having a female form. He said he would go away and think about it. The next day, he said to me, I have been thinking about it. No, there are no advantages. So I thought, well, at least one advantage is we don't have a male ego. Anyway, yes.
But isn't it the case that it seems these days the female ego is also rising?
The female ego is an expression of, in the way it comes out like that and what you saw as being confrontational, it's a way of saying we're in pain because of this. And we're trying to get that pain acknowledged instead of, oh, no, it's really not any problem. Everything's equal. You know, at least if the pain could be acknowledged, even if it can't be remedied, I think it would make us feel better.
Usually, my feeling is the female side, they must develop the self-confidence and take the maximum opportunity, make themselves equal in every field. That's more important. Then in case there are tradition, religious tradition or social tradition, they actually, they become obstacle, then we have to tackle that.
That's what I do.
So that's most welcome.
Very often, teachers, both in Asia and Western teachers, promote sectarianism, maybe out of conceit or of competition or jealousy, even more often out of ignorance. For example, we find that the tradition lacks a practice aspect, as we spoke about yesterday and this morning, an aspect that we really need. But when we want to look for it somewhere else, we're being discouraged by teachers or even get threatened with expulsion from that tradition. And that's a very difficult situation for the student. Or I practiced in a retreat for a whole winter in Bodh Gaya doing Vipassana practice. Then my teacher heard that I was going to Dharamsala for the summer. And he said, this is an example, he said, with true compassion and care for me, he said, Dharamsala is a wonderful place, but be careful, there's Tantra. He was genuinely concerned that I would be misled and be in great danger. And it goes in every direction from every, I think, every tradition I have met in some ways towards other traditions. I think that all this comes down to what I think is maybe the main cause for sectarianism as I see it. It's the lack of information, the lack of understanding, and the lack also of practice or trying some practice of other systems.
True.
So the question to Your Holiness is, how can we avoid those problems in the West, or at least make them less? How to relate to to teachers who are effectively sectarian, and to that kind of text that I mentioned? And with that, the question, if we expose them, if we speak about that, we're in a way already sectarian ourselves, putting down that way. But if we don't react, then we become guilty of complicity.
Very true. The only thing is, the only way, I think the proper way is, you should receive teaching from various traditions as much as you can. I think there is, I don't know the English, the exact meaning of the non-sectarian. Maybe I think the two levels. One level is the non-sectarian means you implement all the different teaching. And then another level is our attitude towards other non-Buddhist tradition. As there's fundamental differences, creator, concept of creator or concept of soul, things like that. So then it is difficult to practice. Now, for example, once you accept the Shunya theory, then there's no place to accept creator, absolute, absolute truth, or the soul, something permanent. Very difficult. If you accept God, then go very detailed, then very difficult to accept Shunya. So like that. So that on that level, I think the non-sectarian means, to me, now for example, I am telling this to other people, and also I believe that to me, Buddhism is best. So my practice is Buddha Dharma, because it suits me. This does not mean Buddhism is best for everyone. Certainly not. So the different people, different religion, is more suitable. So long I respect others' individual right. So I must respect their tradition, no matter what something is wrong from the Buddhist viewpoint. There's something different, entirely different. So therefore, often meeting like this, here is an opportunity of hearing or learning the other traditions' richness, their complete picture. That's very, very useful, very helpful, very necessary.
The problem for the Westerner is that we often have a tendency to think that if somebody, it could be true, that's what I want to ask Your Holiness, but we have a tendency to think that someone who is highly realized is perfect and is not conditioned. But as I have been with I heard teaching from Tibetan Lama, I heard teaching from Vietnamese teacher, and I also heard lots of teaching from my master, who is a Korean Zen master. And when in the way they are, the way they teach, I can really feel they have great realization, because they are very kind, very peaceful, very clear. They all seem to understand that Shunyata means interdependence, dependent origination. So they are very high being. So I respect them very much, and all of us, we respect them very much. The problem comes is that, especially with my teacher, because I knew him the most, I stayed with him for 9 years, but I could see that he seems, from my very diluted point of view, he seems to be, although he has great realization, he seems to be limited by his experience in his culture, and also which makes a problem with the Westerner, because there is two culture meeting. And the second point was that he seems to be limited by his own method and by his own experiences, because he had only experienced his own method of practice, and he got realization through it. Of course, it was the best for him. But then if a friend of mine came and said, oh, Vipassana, and he would say, Vipassana, terrible, you won't get anything with it. Stop Vipassana, and you must do my practice, because then you can have great realization. And I heard the same from Tibetan Lama, and I heard the same from Vietnamese teacher. So it seems to me, my question is, if one attains great realization, does one transcend one conditioning of culture and meditative experience, or does one is still limited, but one has experienced and one has one's culture? And also because in a way, the Westerner, we left with this question: is there one method which is best, or are all the methods best?
Now, for example, you see the one individual cases, like you see your Zen master is the Vipassana. Yes, one particular this individual case, Vipassana is most effective. So for that person, you see, only Vipassana. The other is not necessary. Someone is the Vipassana is the most effective. The Vipassana should concentrate on the Vipassana. Someone different. But then you see the basics of Buddhist structure, both necessary, both right. As I study, it's mainly the Tsongkhapa's work. Then meantime, I received teaching from Yagüe tradition and Kagyu tradition and Sayadaw tradition. Then, in certain point where the Tsongkhapa's explanation not very clear, then they from Nyingma tradition's explanation very helpful. At a certain point in the Nyingma tradition not very clear, not elaborate explanation there. The Germache's explanation very useful.
Well, first of all, I would like to make it clear that, of course, monasticism is not for everybody, nor should it be for everybody, but there should exist the institution of monasticism for that small group of individuals who are drawn to the ideal of a total dedication to the Dharma through renunciation and purity. As we all know, modern society is based mainly on greed and believes that happiness mainly depends on acquisition and the satisfaction of our desires. Because the Sangha preserve a way of life based on the Dharma principles, they're a living example that restraint and simplicity bring happiness and peace. They remind us that one can live with no sex, no family, few possessions, no security, and yet be perfectly happy and content. So therefore Sangha are seen as escapists, as neurotics, as parasites, as people unable to face up to the challenge of intimate relationships, and so on. We all know about this, huh? And renunciation is disparaged and misunderstood. It's considered somehow slightly perverse, or, you know, it's because you can't make it in the world, therefore you renounce it because the world has renounced you. Then they get very little support from the lamas, you know. I mean, Your Holiness, this is true. I mean, for one thing, lay people are not Western lay people. Western lay supporters are not even encouraged to esteem the Sangha, or at least not the Western Sangha. Unlike in traditional Asian societies where the lay people naturally esteem and support the Sangha, in the West this is not so. They're not, the lamas never mention this as part of their Dharma practice. And so the lay people think, well, who are they? You know, and there's no sympathy or appreciation of what they are trying to do. The lamas ordain, and then you're just thrown out on the world with no training, no background, no encouragement, no support, no guidance, nothing. Get on with it. This is very hard. And I am surprised that so many of the Western monastic Sangha stay for so long. I'm not surprised that they disrobe. They start with so much enthusiasm, so much pure faith and devotion, and gradually it just goes down and down as they get so discouraged, so disillusioned, and there is no one who helps them. This is really true, Your Holiness. It's a very hard situation. And it has never happened in the history of Buddhism before. I make a prayer that, that this life of purity and renunciation, which is so rare and precious in this world, that this jewel of the Sangha may not simply be thrown down into the mud of our indifference and contempt.
Makes me tear.
자, 잠시만요. 잠시만요.
Someone is saying that you are quite outrageous.
Well, the difficulties that the Western Sangha are experiencing. As a monk of 19 years, I also have to take some responsibility, and that's difficult to do in some ways. One of the things that attracted myself and many of my other brothers to Tibetan Buddhism was the tradition of philosophical investigation, particularly the Madhyamika philosophy. And also the tradition of meditation, particularly in the tantric meditation. Seeing that kind of training as the main transformative technique in Tibetan Buddhism, like that. And that the taking of vows as a monk would be the best means to ensure an uninterrupted pursuit of those kinds of study and practice, so that the appreciation of the ordination was simply like, don't break the vows, and then get on with the real work of studying the Madhyamika philosophy and training in the tantric practice, like that. And when I reflect over my life, I think that whatever spiritual growth has happened in my life since I met Buddhism in 1972, in fact, all of it has come from the effort or struggle of trying to keep my vows. Because as for my tantric meditations, there's not much benefit. Some appreciation keeps me going, but my meditation is not really a strong, powerful meditation. And over 20 years of studying Madhyamika philosophy, I still have a hard time finding the object to meditate on, like that. So in fact, whatever kind of quality I've been trying to keep my vows, you know? Like that. So it's interesting, you know, the difference in kind of emphasis and appreciation of what's really the practice that brings transformation. I heard one quotation of a geshe. He said he became a monk and he studied the great classic texts for many years. And at the end of his study, he studied the Vinaya and he discovered he wasn't a monk anymore. So, I've also been very concerned about the Western nuns. And
not concerned about Western monk.
I said also. And the relationship between the monks and the nuns, like that. And how, you know, it's kind of brothers and sisters, like this one family together. And so, and I'm also aware of the kind of, what we call in the West is the problem, the gender problem, and sexism, like that. I became aware of that a number of years ago, and so I have some empathy or some sympathy with the situation. So during the ordination ceremony that we have at Nalanda Monastery, our abbot has asked me to participate in that, and sometimes I have a small role of like, for instance, determining the actual time of the ordination. So, okay, so it's important to know when you're ordained so that when you come into a gathering of other Sangha, everybody knows where they're supposed to sit. It is very clear. So, as I also believe in the policy of trying to like make everything clear, I took, and also as I have a very difficult time memorizing Tibetan, so I translated this section into English so that I could memorize it and so that I could make it very clear to the people getting ordained. And what a shock I found. Because there it says that when you're lining up, people of greater ordination sit ahead of people of lesser ordination, and of those of the same level of ordination, then they sit ahead if they were ordained first, except with the nuns and the monks. Bhikshuni. It says there that a bhikshuni of many years has to sit behind a novice of 1 day. Because although the ordination is superior, the basis is inferior. Like that, that's what it says. So I was shocked. I said, oh, there it is. I'd never seen evidence of the kind of sexism in the Buddhist Vinaya before. I just heard about it, then there it is. So then, during the ordination ceremony, I stand up like as a respectful Gelong, like this, and I proceed to recite this, and I get terribly embarrassed. Not only embarrassed to say it, but ashamed of the institution that I'm representing. And I'm thinking, as I'm saying that, why doesn't she get up and leave? I would. if I were to hear such a statement. And so then what I want to do is change that.
I believe, you see, some of these because of the discrimination on the basis of the body, I believe due to the existing circumstances when Buddha, you see, Buddha taught. So therefore, that, as you mentioned, I think we can consider as a cultural part, right? So it's a culture change. So that part, I think there is sufficient reason to change. But again, I still feel, unless it's a Sangha, at least the Tibetan Sanghas, some scholars, some a big gathering, I cannot change. I cannot change.
But His Holiness might be able to call for such a Sangha.
Oh, that's definitely.
Oh. And we could like call it sooner than later.
Yes, I do. Yes. I promise within 6 years. The 6 years, but the 6 months. 6 months. I will do. No problem. No problem.
We experience many of the same things in our community. Yes. Just as Thupten Pende described, we have shifted the arrangement of the men and the women in our monastery. So before we had the monks in front of the shrine, and then the nuns down one side and the novices down the other. that the monks have between everyone and the Buddha. And now we shift, so you have nuns on one side and the monks on the other.
So this I found very difficulties.
Yes.
And my first two visits in Thailand, as I follow their tradition, when you see the laymen as well as the women, when they show respect, I simply ignore. That's their tradition. And now this time, it's my third time, I just ignore their tradition. I practice my own way. You see, when they did like this, I do, whether laymen or women, and shake hand. So I think this is some monks, I think the Dalai Lama no longer as a monk.
So we too have felt this is very, very painful for us.
Right, that's right. And very uncomfortable. When there's someone very sincerely is respecting.
Yes.
It's
very a feeling of being very arrogant.
Right.
And so, but then to have this every day, every morning, every evening, when people pay respects to you as a senior monk, then it was like having a spear in your heart every time. So we had a meeting of all the senior Western Sangha in Thailand, and we decided to change it. We had a little revolution.
Oh, terrible.
So now, at the end of a ceremony, or when someone is...
with permission of your Thai teacher, or without their acknowledgement?
We decided amongst the Westerners, and we didn't have time to check with the Thai master. They will find out in due time.
Telephone is there.
I think we're going to let them find out in their own time. Your Holiness, I wanted to talk a little bit about the question of people leaving the monastic sangha, and the different questions that surround that, and the problems and aspects of that, particularly in the environment of the West. Living in the West as a nun or a monk is too difficult. It's not enough support. Sometimes the influences are from you lose your faith in Buddha Dharma. Sometimes because you have a lot of sexual desire that you cannot deal with, and you need to step out of the monastic environment. Sometimes you feel that people feel that they do not need the monastic community anymore. So there are many reasons why people leave, and as Your Holiness might be aware, that many of the Dharma teachers here who are not in robes were at one time
ex-monks.
Technically, and in the scriptures, it is that leaving the bhikshu, bhikshuni, or monastic life to return to the lay life is falling. I would just be interested, and I think other people here would be interested to hear Your Holiness's feeling that, is this necessarily the case, or is it, as you've been saying, is it better sometimes to have spent some time as a Buddhist nun or Buddhist monk, and then to leave when your heart is no longer in it, or the conditions are not good?
The other day I mentioned the Buddhist stated where the monk sangha there, and to carry those three practices, he feel very comfortable or less anxiety, right? So that therefore the sangha in Buddhism, no doubt, very important. Then the next is the question of you can keep those vows or not. So you see, like I think in Mahayana teaching, say, or Bodhisattva teaching, regarding theory, the Madhyamika theory, about Shunya, Madhyamika explanation, or the Chitta Mantra explanation, both, this is suppose, explaining about ultimate truth, shunya. And then the Madhyamika say, the Madhyamika's explanation is the correct one. And find many faults about the Chittamantra's explanation. But then at the same time, Chittamantra philosophy also taught by Buddha himself. There are some sutras. Clearly indicated the Chittamantra's philosophy. So therefore, the Buddha himself, created these different theory. Why? The one theory simply cannot be sufficient for different variety of people. So therefore, regarding the monks or nuns, such a vow, it's good. At the same time, everybody cannot keep these things. So therefore, or another word, I think everybody cannot keep a whole life. So in that case, someone who has some strong desire to take the vow, but in reality they cannot keep properly for whole life. So under such circumstances, I think the better is the Thai situation, Thai tradition. I think good. But at the same time, every work, every human action, there's positive things, negative things. Like I said, the philosophy is a middle way. So every aspect there should be middle way. Too much kasuda.
If it is made, sorry, if it is made too flexible,
not good. But too tight way,
too rigid.
Too rigid also is not good. So basically, I prefer the Thai thing.
Thai system.
So therefore, the individual, they also have the freedom. Go join monastery, and then and live. But this also, I think, very helpful. While they remain in the monastery, remain as a good monk. So if gives you some more freedom, more flexible, I think those who really remain as a good monk, these people they remain, and those who are a bit stupid or a bit naughty, they will go. So this is my attitude. Now then, obviously, the value of monk and nun. That's to me it's quite clear. This is the monk, as a true monk, there is less disturbance of the mind. Of course, I think the basic thing is our main aim is nirvana. Even from the general speaking, general order. Yes, the aim nirvana. So how to achieve nirvana? This is our enemy. That is the first link of 12 links.
12 links.
First,
the first chain, the 12 links of interdependent origination. The first link.
That's really the Kasoda. Not only aggressor, but also very, very intelligent, right? Intelligent aggressor. Very, very difficult to defeat that. Even nuclear weapons, you cannot destroy that. That's the most powerful, isn't it? And also, I think because of that,
it's also very devious, very clever.
And the looks, that one looks very kind to us. Reality, lead wrong way. So in order to fight with that, the vipassana, isn't it? The vipassana, which realize shunya or anatma. So for that, one pointness of mind is highly necessary. Without that, very difficult. Even though you may achieve that wisdom, but that wisdom will not be effective unless you have to combine with the Samathi. So Samathi means the training of mindfulness. So in our daily life, mindfulness, as a monk, when our eye goes somewhere, immediately you see, remind, and our mind goes somewhere, immediately you see, they control. So this, I think, the Shila, actually, the increasing or training of mindfulness. So the more the power of God, more power of the
the greater the force of your mindfulness, the greater success you will have in attaining tranquil abiding or shamatha.
And then I think the practical level, perhaps I think the layperson's life is much more colorful than monks, nuns, isn't it? But at the same time, you see, the long run, I think, our mind remain like, our life remain like this. Not so colorful, but very steady.
Constant.
So no matter how colorful, we have to die. We have to be passing through old age. One become old age, is the wife and husband is waiting one's own death and looking at each other's kasota, at each other's face, helplessly. Yeah. This is a long term. I'm not talking about the nirvana, but within this lifetime. There are some good things there.
Rewards.
It's really worthwhile to keep these vows, to keep, to remain as a monk.
We met yesterday evening and came up with a list of 9 or 10 direct actions or suggestions that we would like to implement as a result of the gathering. The first is the decision of the group. We would like to write a letter of information on many of the topics that were addressed here and send it to other Western Buddhist teachers and Western Buddhist centers, and draft of the kind of letter we are thinking to send.
So I will read out, Your Holiness, this text. From March 16th to 19th, 1993, a meeting was held at Dharamsala between His Holiness the Dalai Lama and a group of 20 Western Dharma teachers representing the major Buddhist traditions in Europe and America. The aim of the meeting was to discuss openly a wide range of issues concerning the transmission of the Buddha Dharma to Western lands. For many, His Holiness's advice served as a profound confirmation of their own feelings and concerns. It is sincerely hoped that such dialogues with His Holiness will be able to continue in future. The conference served as a valuable forum in which representatives of different traditions were able to meet together and exchange views. We are planning for such meetings to continue both amongst ourselves and with our many other colleagues who were unable to be in Dharamsala. And finally, we express our heartfelt gratitude to His Holiness for his exceptional generosity, compassion, and wisdom.
So I deeply appreciate. And firstly, this kind of the gathering, this is the first experience, first experience. As I mentioned before, I very much appreciate. And then secondly, this is day by day. I think everyone really take genuine sort of involvement, commitment. I very much appreciate. Then thirdly, I think our smile. From first day, second day more, third day more. That also, I think, the indication. Everyone, human being, in spite of the different sort of the language or different dress, different, I think the personal nature, but we are same human being. So when we come closer, the basic, I think, human nature will come out. At the beginning, some kind of superficial things there. Then we come to closer, then these superficial things go out, then real person or real human feeling come out. The real real human being, I consider, I believe, gentleness, compassionate nature. So on that level, I think full of peace and full of compassion, full of harmony is there. So whether we call it Buddha nature or not, it's something different. So that's my basic belief. So I think we produce some, I think, the positive sort of atmosphere, and each of us, you see, I think absorb that positive atmosphere. Now what important? Now past is past, whether something good or bad already, or the past. Now, what is important? Future must be good, because everyone wants something good. So now, as a Buddhist, no creator. We ourselves as a creator. So future is our own hand. So must realize that. So make every effort. And even fail doesn't matter. We made every effort. No regret. Thank you.
I was really deeply impressed by His Holiness's ability to express his sense of the Bodhisattva ideal in all sorts of different contexts. That very much impressed me, and I hope that if people can come away from the meeting with him infused more with the Bodhisattva spirit, that will be a great thing.
I think it's very historic, and I hope that it's the beginning of the process of a serious discussion of the nature and structure of Buddhist institutions.
For the first time, it has brought together very experienced exponents of all the main Buddhist traditions in the West. Other times there have been conferences for people primarily concerned with Tibetan Buddhism or in the Theravadan circles, but for this time now everybody has come together, and I think that in their discussions they realized that so many problems which they felt were unique to their own situation are in fact shared by the majority, and I think this has helped them a lot to come to an understanding of their problems and in some cases perhaps to some possible solution.
Being able to come together to speak, to share and discover this commonality that respects the particular differences of different traditions and yet recognizes what is common, I think it is tremendous strength to the whole process of the development of a Western Buddhist culture.
Not that it's going to be easy, but it'll be, at least there's the first step. I have confidence in that.
And one of the main things is that there's obviously a universal concern for adoption of a very kind of clear and exact code of ethics, and not principally for Buddhist people in a position of teaching Buddha Dharma in the West, but also conveyed from the people who are teaching, who are obviously the examples that others have to follow, to convey into the Buddhist world at large that that virtue and ethics are not a dispensable aspect of the teaching, or something that could or should be overridden by kind of teachings on the absolute level of, we're all Buddhas, everything is one, all beings have the Buddha nature, everything is perfect, therefore, I can do what I like. And using that, as it has been used in the past, as a kind of license to just follow one's own inclinations and fears and desires.
And so I think at the human level, first is to meet, to make contact. At the maybe theoretical level, to realize that maybe there is something to be learned from other traditions. Then I think the second important point is the fact that there is His Holiness, and is a very high, I would say, realized person. And so since we are on that path, and we really look up to him, and to see him in action is very inspiring, and to see his wisdom, his compassion, it also makes us, I think, even more easy for us to be open-minded, and to really try to look into these things, and to think, to think of these things with wisdom and compassion at the same time. And I think that's what His Holiness is showing us, that we must be, have integrity, but at the same time be kind to each other.
His Holiness seemed to implicitly give us encouragement to be creative with the Dharma and to try to adopt it as best as we can to situations. And that was very helpful because it gives us this license and reaffirmation that what we've been doing has in fact been the right direction.
I think one thing that's important is not to think that we are thereby going to be simply following what the Dalai Lama says. I think this is an important point, that I don't think anybody here will say, right, I can do this now because the Dalai Lama has said that's okay to do. That, I feel, would actually go against the principle of what the Dalai Lama was opening up in this dialogue. That is, that each person should rely more upon their own sense of what is right, of what is authentic, and to act upon that sense rather than feeling beholden to some higher authority.
The conference has spoken for itself in many ways because there's a whole variety of different points and ideas and difficulties that have been brought up and discussed, and yet the very fact that all these different disparate elements of the Buddhist world in the West can come together and can meet harmoniously, can discuss some very kind of tricky and pointed issues in some cases in a very civilized and friendly and loving way is a tremendously good sign for the Buddha Dharma.